Story 1. My usual Saturday morning activity was canceled, so I decided to do my grocery shopping with my unexpectedly free block of time. I was in the cereal aisle looking to see if any of the cereal we like was on sale when a little old lady asked me politely if I could get her a big box of corn flakes from the top shelf. I am much taller than her. She told me, "They always put the fresher boxes on the high shelf, and it takes me so long to finish a box." She compared the expiry date to the one she had in her hand and kept the one I gave her, thanking me for my help. Seconds later, I felt a sharp poke in my back, and I turned around. It was an angry woman, and I quickly realized that I had seen her before. I hadn't seen her at all in the year since she last mistook me for an employee, so I assumed that she must now usually shop during this time, and I do not. "I knew that you really worked here, you brat. Thanks to you, I was banned from this store. You wait here while I get your darn manager." I did wait in my place, not because she ordered me to, but because I was still choosing cereal. Shortly after, she reappeared with a manager type in tow. She said, "Your worker here was just rude to me, just like last time. You banned me from the store over that, and I want compensation now." The manager looked at me, looked at her, and then used his phone to take a picture of her. Then he said, "First thing, this guy is not an employee. Second thing, if you were banned from this store, you should not be here now. Please leave immediately and do not return. If you ever do come back, you will be charged with trespassing. I have taken a picture of you to help enforce this ban." Her mouth dropped open. He escorted her all the way outside and returned after a bit to see if I was okay, likely wanting to prevent a negative review from me or something. I let him know that I had no issues, and he told me that she was previously banned for a number of complaints, not just for the events of my previous encounter. Story 2. The other week, I went to a local store that's like a Walmart, but it's not a franchise. It's just one giant supermarket that's owned locally, and this happened in Canada. I'm a young guy, and there was a woman with her 3 small kids behind me. She had Karen hair, but I hadn't really noticed because her mask had a Cool Moose logo on it. Because it's just natural instinct here, I grabbed the front door handle and held it open for her, a common act of courtesy here. There was an overweight woman in a cowboy hat bigger than Texas, full-on sprinting towards the door from across the parking lot, screaming at me to wait. I kind of just sat there like, what the heck? She went in, and I just sat there for a second, not understanding what had happened. We'll call this woman Karen. Anyway, I went ahead and did my shopping, and the woman and her kids came up to me. The mother started to chat with me. Karen came over to me and said, "Hey you work here. Where is the milk?" Yeah, it seems like a reasonable thing to ask someone, and she seemed snobby but not anything I caught on to. I just told her where the milk was, and the mother and I laughed when Karen left. The employees here wore an apron with their names embroidered on the chest, and I was in full camouflage and muddy boots. The mother and I ended up having a really good conversation. Her boyfriend apparently left her and their kids a few years ago, and we just talked for a good 45 minutes while we shopped before Karen came back over. "I want to speak to your manager. You have been harassing this girl and her children." I was again dumbfounded, like, what? "Good luck finding my manager. He doesn't work here," I told her. I thought she would go full Karen, but she actually stopped for a second and noticed what I was wearing. That's when the mother chimed in and said, "Can you leave us alone, please?" Karen, now defeated, slumped away. I have no clue what this lady thought she was doing or was going to accomplish at all, but I fear for when she becomes a full Karen. The mother and I exchanged phone numbers before heading our separate ways and have since been talking about going out. Story 3. This happened Monday. I have cataracts and glaucoma and had an appointment to measure my eyes for corrective surgeries. The office staff wear green polo shirts with the office name on them, khaki pants, and black sweaters. I'm wearing gray yoga pants, blue Uggs boots, a turquoise thermal shirt, a black polar fleece jacket, and a knitted beaded cap on my head. I always arrive 15 to 30 minutes early for my appointments. They gave me additional paperwork to fill out. So I was sitting on the sofa, minding my own business, filling the health form out, having to look up what my prescription and dosage is, when this older woman came up and stood there staring at me. I looked at her over the top of my glasses and asked if I could help her. She demanded that I go get behind my computer and get her signed in. No, my computer isn't here at this office, but about 20 minutes down the road at my husband's business office. I really don't think it would help her at all, but I was raised to be polite to my elders, and I am in my 60s. I'm sorry? I don't work here. I got up and turned in my paperwork and sat back down. She followed me up to the desk. She demanded to speak to the office manager by George. About that time, I got called back from my appointment. After 45 minutes, mapping eyes takes a while, and setting up surgery appointments even longer. I was escorted to the front, and this older woman was still complaining about me. She pointed at me to the office manager, her. The office manager told her that I don't work here, and she needs to wait in line to get signed in. Then the manager took my paperwork and set up my 2 post-operative appointments. I could hear that old woman complaining that I'm probably taking her dates. The office manager just shook her head. I told her it was no big deal, smiled at the old woman, and told her to have a nice day. Story 4. About 6 years ago on a Saturday night, I was attending a concert with some friends. This venue had 2 parts. The main part was a restaurant bar with a big outdoor venue that could fit about 1,500 people, and across the street was the second venue that could fit about 1,000. I got confused as to which venue I was heading to, accidentally parked at the main venue, saw my mistake, and walked across the street to the intended venue. I had worked late that day and couldn't go home and change, so I was wearing a black polo shirt and black pants. After my concert ended, I walked back across the street to the main venue where I had parked. I tried to take a shortcut around the building, only to find myself blocked by temporary fences and barricades. I looked to my left and saw a couple of tour buses, walked towards those, and managed to walk in between them. I found myself in a loading staging area with some hospitality tents and people walking around, while I was hearing a band playing really close by. I grabbed a snack and a drink and asked a guy how to leave. He pointed to the right. The only way to the right was this long ramp that led around the building. So I walked up and followed it around the building, literally to the side of the stage where the band Yellowcard was playing live. I'm talking 10 feet away from me, at most. As I walked up, somewhat confused as to the scene in front of me, this woman with a clipboard and a headset approached and yelled, asking me where my lanyard was. I kind of shrugged and said I didn't have one. She got upset and said don't move. She returned in 5 seconds with a lanyard with an all-access pass and told me to put it on. I tried telling her I didn't think I was supposed to be there, but she snapped and told me to be quiet. She said to stay right there to guard the ramp to make sure no one accidentally tried to come that way, literally what I had just done, and walked away. So I spent the next 30 minutes on the side of their stage while they finished their set. After their encore, I headed back to the hospitality area, grabbed some food, had a few drinks, and mingled with some folks. After a while, I saw a headset lady walking around, so I walked up to her, handed her the lanyard, thanked her for the drinks and the show, and left. Story 5. I just joined the Reddit family, and this is my first post. I'm old, like in my 70s old. But my wife said that some of my stories might be entertaining. This is something I witnessed about 10 years ago. I was shopping at a store with a big bullseye logo. I noticed this older lady who looked to be in her late 60s who was just going about her business. I noticed because she held herself very upright and with a lot of confidence, though she was only about 5 feet tall and 100 pounds if she was an ounce. She had on a nice red blouse and tan pants, which turned out to be a bad fashion choice for this store, as you will soon see. As I passed by, we nodded to each other, and I started making my way to the luggage and bags to look for a new backpack for myself. After about a couple of minutes of looking, I heard raised voices and glanced over my shoulder to see the older woman in a heated exchange with a middle-aged man twice her size. He was talking very loudly and calling her awful names, the B word and worse, and telling her that just because she was old didn't mean that she could ignore customers. She was, I imagine, trying to explain that she didn't work there, but couldn't get a word in edgewise since the big bully was refusing to let her talk. I started to walk over there to see if I could help, but soon saw that my help was not needed. The big bully actually had the gall to grab her by her shoulder and give her a shake. I will never forget what happened next. The older lady grabbed his wrist, twisted it behind him in some kind of martial arts move, kicked him behind his knee, which made him collapse onto his knees. She then had his arm behind his back with his hand in what looked like a very painful position that, apparently, he couldn't escape from. By then, I was close enough that I heard her softly tell him, "Look, I said I don't work here, and I will break your darn arm if you try to touch me again. Now, do you understand?" He started to struggle, but gave up when she elevated his pinned arm a little, and he cried out in pain. She said, "I asked if you understand." He nodded his head, and she said, "Now, are you going to be a good boy and leave me alone?" He nodded again, and she released him. He knelt there on the floor for a minute, rubbing his wrist and looking like any full-grown man would look if they just had been beaten up by a little older lady, contrite and embarrassed. She simply walked away and continued shopping. He finally got up and walked out of the store. I caught up to her and asked if she was all right as if. She smiled sweetly and said, "I can't stand bullies." We talked for a minute, and she told me that she took self-defense classes at a nearby senior center and she learned to take care of herself a long time ago and refuses to be bullied. Like the title says, you can't judge a book by its cover. So don't mess with harmless-looking little older ladies. They might just beat you up. Story 6. I love to tell my husband stories of how almost everywhere I go, people at one point or another assume I work at that particular place. He laughs, but I don't think he really believes me. It has happened to me at Target, Total Wine, a car wash place, etc. 9 times out of 10, I attempted to help the person because I am just a nice person, and most of the time, it ends with me pointing in the general direction of their inquiry, and off they go. Then there is always that one person who can never be satisfied, or I just am burnt out on being nice and wish for as little human interaction as possible. My husband got to witness the latter at this last encounter. We were at the grocery store with the kids. This was pre-COVID, and I was wearing a black t-shirt and some jeans. Nothing fancy, nothing like the uniforms people at this store wear. I was reaching into a cooler door to get some yogurt when I feel a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I am greeted by a middle-aged woman. I need to know where the hamburger buns are. I take a sigh and kind of roll my eyes. Yes, I know where the bread aisle is, but I just don't have it in me to be helpful after a long week of work. I politely tell her I don't know and turn back around to finish getting my yogurt. I get it, step around her, and walk towards my cart full of food stuff, children, and my husband, who is watching this interaction. This was not the end of it. I am about halfway there, and the lady grabs my shoulder this time. "If you don't know, you need to find someone who does," and she keeps going. I make eye contact with my husband and give him an "I told you so" look and walk over to my cart to place my yogurt next to my daughter, who loudly asks me why that lady is talking to me. The lady has a look on her face. I think she knows I don't work there, but she can't back down to admit she was wrong. "Well, I know you are here with your family, but I know you work here, so you have to help me." My daughter is now super confused. "Mommy, why does that lady think you work here?" I just start pushing my cart down another aisle, leaving the lady stammering about talking to the manager, etc. My husband is laughing so hard, talking about how angry that woman looked because I wasn't helping her. So I thought it was done. Nope. We are checking out and bagging up our groceries, and she comes in all of her upset glory with a poor, haggard-looking manager in tow. She stops in front of our cart and points to me. "This is your lazy employee that refuses to help me." The manager looks at her and looks at me, having no clue who I am. My kids are starting to ask more questions, and my husband is no use whatsoever as he is now doubled over with laughter. He snorted. The manager starts apologizing to me and asks if I need any help getting my stuff to our car. I decline but thank him. He then turns to the lady and tells her she is mistaken, that I am not nor have I ever been an employee of that store, and she should leave me alone. The lady is livid. Her plan clearly went wrong, and she mumbles something about how she knows I work there, and she is going to call corporate as we pass her. I might have told her to have a nice day as we left with a big grin on my face. My daughter told her she was weird. I never saw her again at that store. The manager and I did bond over this, and one time when the lines were super long, he opened up a register just for me to check me out. He is a very nice dude. And yes, my daughter is that sassy.